All right, let's dive into some serious strategy. Today, we're tackling The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Ah, a classic.
You know it, and you sent over an excerpt, and
Yeah.
I gotta say, this ancient text is way more relevant than you might think.
It's amazing how a book written centuries ago for, actual battlefields can still be so insightful.
It really is, especially when you consider Sun Tzu was writing this around 500 BC.
Right.
Talk about a different world. Chariots and swords, not exactly our current tech scene, huh?
Yeah, that's what makes it even more fascinating.
Totally. Like, how have these ideas stood the test of time?
Well, the art of war isn't really just about winning battles, in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
It's more like a blueprint for achieving goals.
Right.
In any area, really. Leadership, business, you name it.
And without causing unnecessary damage along the way.
That's key.
Right. It makes you think about how often we rush into conflict without considering those long-term consequences.
Exactly. Sun Tzu was all about using intelligence and strategic thinking to outmaneuver your opponent, not just overpowering them.
Smart. And he had this, brilliant framework for doing just that.
Oh, yeah.
The 5 fundamentals and the 7 assessments. Like he was saying, before you even think about making a move, you need to really analyze the situation.
Absolutely. The 5 fundamentals, those are doctrine, time, terrain, leadership, and discipline. Those are the crucial factors to consider in any conflict.
And the cool thing is how adaptable they are
Oh, for
to
sure.
modern scenarios.
Right.
Like, for instance, how does terrain, something we usually think of geographically, right,
Yeah.
apply to, say, a business deal?
Well, think of terrain as the competitive landscape.
Okay.
Are you operating in a crowded market? Do you have unique advantages? What obstacles are you facing? Sun Tzu was basically saying, you need to map out the terrain before you plan your route.
Makes sense. And then you've got the 7 assessments, which is like this scorecard, right?
Uh-huh, yeah.
You're comparing yourself to your opponent. Who's got the wiser leader? Who's more disciplined? It's like pregame analysis.
That's a great way to put it. By carefully assessing both sides, your strengths and weaknesses, resources, even morale. Sun Tzu believed you could predict the outcome of a conflict before it even began.
Wow. Talk about a competitive edge.
Right.
And speaking of strategic advantages, we got to talk about one of Sun Tzu's most famous lines. All warfare is based on deception.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea, we're not talking about lying or being unethical.
No, not at all.
It's about strategic maneuvering, right?
Exactly. Appearing weak when you're strong, maybe feigning retreat to lure your opponent into a trap.
Oh, I see.
Striking when they least expect it.
So it's less about trickery and more about being smart, unpredictable.
Right, using psychology and calculated moves to gain an advantage.
Gotcha. Can you give us a modern example? How would this play out?
Okay, imagine you're in a negotiation.
Okay.
You might hold back some information until just the right moment. Or maybe make a small concession early to get leverage later. It's not about dishonesty, it's about strategy.
Like playing your cards close to your chest.
Exactly.
It's like a chess game almost.
Yeah.
And I can see how that strategic thinking would be so valuable in any kind of negotiation, from business deals to personal disagreements.
Oh, absolutely. And this brings us to another point Sun Tzu makes, avoiding prolonged conflict.
Right.
He knew that drawn-out battles, they just drain resources and morale, whether it's actual warfare or metaphorical battles in business or personal life.
Yeah, think about projects that lose momentum or those arguments that just go in circles.
Oh, the worst.
Everyone gets exhausted and nothing gets done.
Precisely. Sun Tzu believed in achieving victory as swiftly and efficiently as possible.
Okay.
And that leads us to what he considered the ultimate skill.
Ooh, I'm all ears. What's the ultimate skill according to Sun Tzu?
Winning without fighting at all.
Wait, hold on. Winning without fighting? How's that even possible?
It's about disrupting your opponent's plans, breaking their alliances, cutting off their resources, all without direct conflict.
So like a mental chess game. Outmaneuvering them before the battle even begins.
You got it. Imagine a company that completely dominates a new market before their competitors even react.
Wow.
Or a skilled negotiator who resolves a conflict before it escalates into a lawsuit.
That's incredible. That's next level strategic thinking.
It is.
And it shows that sometimes the most effective approach is avoiding conflict altogether.
And to do this, Sun Tzu really emphasizes adaptability.
Yeah, that formlessness concept, right? Being like water.
Exactly. He was saying instead of being rigid, you got to be able to adapt to the changing circumstances of any situation.
So like water flowing around obstacles.
Yeah. You find the path of least resistance and exploit your opponent's weaknesses.
Okay, I'm seeing how this ancient wisdom applies today.
Right.
But being that adaptable takes serious awareness.
Absolutely. You need to assess the situation, know your own strengths and weaknesses, and be willing to adjust your approach as needed.
Which maybe is why he dedicated a whole section to espionage.
Ah, yes.
Espionage.
This is where people imagine, like, cloak and dagger scenarios.
I know. But Sun Tzu was talking about something much broader.
Yeah.
He outlines 5 types of spies, right?
Mm-hmm. Native, inside, double, expendable, and living.
It does sound a bit like a spy movie, yeah.
A little bit. But really, he was emphasizing gathering information from various sources.
Yes.
So not secret agents infiltrating, but being informed, doing your research,
Yeah.
understanding the situation from every angle.
That 360-degree view
Right. Whether you're assessing a business deal, a relationship, or any challenge.
makes you think, what kind of intelligence gathering do we do in our own lives to make decisions?
That's a great question. We all gather information in different ways.
We do.
Through research, observation, conversations.
Definitely.
And it all circles back to one of the central themes of The Art of War, knowing yourself and your opponent,
So true.
which seems to be a recurring idea throughout the text.
It is. And something we'll definitely explore more in the next part of our deep dive.
We will. We'll look at how Sun Tzu's ideas about leadership, discipline, and morale can help you be a more effective leader in any situation.
So stay tuned, everyone. We're just getting started on this journey into the world of ancient strategy.
It's going to be good. Welcome back to our deep dive into the art of war.
All right, so we've covered some foundational principles.
Yeah.
But now let's get into the tactical side.
Yeah, let's get tactical.
Sun Tzu had a lot to say about assessing different types of terrain.
Oh, he did.
And this is where his, metaphorical thinking really shines.
It really does. Because we're not just talking about literal mountains and valleys here.
Right, exactly. It's more like he's using these landscapes to represent different situations we might encounter in life.
Exactly. So let's say you're facing a challenging project at work, right?
Okay.
There are unexpected roadblocks, resources are tight, the deadline's looming.
It's stressful.
This could be considered difficult terrain in Sun Tzu's terms.
I see. So how would Sun Tzu advise us to navigate this kind of metaphorical terrain?
Well, he'd say proceed cautiously.
Okay.
Make sure you have the necessary resources.
Right.
And be prepared for a long, potentially arduous journey.
So it's not about just charging in blindly.
No, not at all.
It's more about strategic planning and careful execution.
Exactly.
He also talks about the importance of knowing when to retreat, right?
Oh, absolutely. Remember, Sun Tzu was all about minimizing losses
Right.
and choosing your battles strategically.
So sometimes the wisest move is to step back, reassess, and regroup.
Exactly. There's no shame in a tactical retreat if it means preserving your resources and
Right.
coming back stronger later.
It's like that saying, he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day.
Haha, exactly. And Sun Tzu actually takes this terrain analysis even further with his 9 classes of terrain.
Okay.
Now, it might sound a bit like a geography lesson,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
really a framework for understanding different types of situations and the strategies that work best in each one.
So instead of literal landscapes,
Mhm.
he's talking about different kinds of challenges, opportunities.
Precisely. For example, he talks about dispersive ground,
Okay.
where it's advantageous to scatter your opponent's forces.
How would that apply, say, in a business context?
Well, think about disrupting a competitor's supply chain
Oh, okay.
or launching a marketing campaign that targets their weaknesses.
So it's about exploiting the specific characteristics of the terrain.
Exactly, to gain a strategic advantage.
I'm with you.
And then there's contentious ground,
Okay.
where a decisive battle is unavoidable.
So like a head-to-head competition.
Exactly. Maybe you have to go head-to-head with a competitor for a key contract or market share.
High stakes.
It can be. But beyond understanding the terrain, Sun Tzu also really stressed understanding your opponent. He famously said, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle."
Wow. That's powerful.
It is.
But how do we truly know our opponent in a modern context? I mean, we're not facing armies on a battlefield anymore.
It's about gathering intelligence.
Right. Which, like we discussed earlier, isn't just about, cloak and dagger stuff.
Exactly. It's about understanding your competitor's strengths and weaknesses, their motivations, values, even their fears.
So this could be anything from analyzing their business strategies to understanding their company culture.
Exactly. Being informed, insightful.
Okay.
And once you have that understanding, Sun Tzu says you can start looking for those unguarded spots.
Okay, but we're not talking about literal weak points here.
Right. Not necessarily. It's more about identifying vulnerabilities
Yeah.
in their thinking, their strategy, or even their emotional state. So, for example, if you know your competitor is overconfident or impulsive.
You could use that to your advantage.
Exactly. Finding those cracks in their armor.
Those areas where you can strategically exploit their weaknesses.
You got it.
But at the same time, Sun Tzu warns us about becoming predictable ourselves.
Yes.
We can't just rely on the same tactics over and over again.
He puts it beautifully when he says, the formations are like water. The nature of water is to avoid heights and hasten downwards. The nature of the army is to avoid the full and strike the empty. The flow of water is determined by the earth. The victory of the army is determined by the enemy.
So we need to be adaptable like water,
Exactly.
constantly adjusting our approach based on the situation and our opponent's moves.
You got it. It's about being creative, innovative, and always willing to rethink your assumptions.
I love that. This is really making me think about how we approach challenges in our own lives,
It should.
whether it's a negotiation, a competition, or even just a disagreement. How can we apply these principles to gain a strategic advantage?
Right. It's a great question. Think about a time when you were facing a really tough challenge.
Okay.
Did you fully understand the terrain? Did you really know your opponent? Could you have been more adaptable?
It's like Sun Tzu is encouraging us to become more strategic thinkers in all areas of life.
He is. The Art of War reminds us that strategy, intelligence, and adaptability are crucial for success.
Not just on the battlefield, but everywhere.
Exactly.
So we've covered terrain analysis, espionage, adaptability,
I have.
but there's one crucial aspect of Sun Tzu's philosophy we haven't touched on yet:
Which is?
leadership.
Ah, yes. And that's where we're headed next.
Perfect.
In the final part of our deep dive,
Great.
we'll look at how Sun Tzu's ideas about leadership, discipline, and morale can help you become a more effective leader.
In any situation.
Exactly.
So stay tuned, everyone, as we continue our exploration of the art of war. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the art of war.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. We've covered terrain, strategy, even some espionage. But now it's time to tackle a topic that's relevant to everyone.
And that is leadership. Yes. A timeless topic.
It really is. And, it's fascinating how a text written for ancient battlefields can have so much to say about leadership today.
It's true, whether it's business, politics, or even just our personal lives.
Exactly. So what did Sun Tzu consider the hallmarks of a truly great leader?
Well, he highlights a blend of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
Interesting combination.
Isn't it? He doesn't just focus on being tough or commanding.
Right.
There's this balance of intellect, compassion, and discipline.
That makes sense. Because a leader who only inspires fear might get obedience for a while, but they're not going to cultivate genuine loyalty or long-term commitment.
Precisely. Sun Tzu believed a leader must earn respect and trust.
Right.
And that comes from leading by example, being fair, and having a clear vision.
Absolutely. He also talked about discipline, but not in a harsh way.
No, not at all.
It's more about a well-organized, motivated team where everyone understands their role
Exactly.
and contributes effectively.
Right. Remember, efficiency and minimizing losses were key for Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
A disciplined army moves with precision and purpose, everyone working in sync towards a common goal.
How would we translate that to, say, a modern workplace? What would a disciplined team look like there?
It's about clear expectations, providing the right training and resources, and cultivating a culture of accountability.
I like that.
Recognizing and rewarding good performance, but also addressing issues quickly and fairly when they arise.
Makes sense. And Sun Tzu also had some insightful things to say about morale,
Oh, definitely.
which is crucial for any team, whether it's sports, a company, even a family.
He knew that the mental and emotional state of your troops, so to speak,
Yeah.
can be just as important as their skills or resources.
Interesting.
Keeping morale high, celebrating victories, acknowledging hardships, showing genuine concern for your followers' well-being, those were all part of his leadership philosophy.
And he also emphasized choosing your battles wisely.
Right. Absolutely. Knowing when to engage and when to hold back.
A skilled leader, according to Sun Tzu, avoids unnecessary conflict
Right.
and only chooses battles that are strategically important and likely to be won. And that applies to so many areas of life, Business decisions, disagreements, even just deciding where to focus your time and energy.
Exactly. It's about knowing when to push forward, when to hold back, when to compromise, and when to stand firm.
This all circles back to that core principle we keep discussing, knowing yourself and knowing your opponent.
It does. It's a recurring theme.
It is.
A great leader understands their own strengths and weaknesses, but also takes the time to understand those of the people around them.
So being self-aware, constantly analyzing and adapting your approach.
You got it. Sun Tzu's wisdom has lasted for centuries because it's rooted in understanding human nature.
And the dynamics of conflict and cooperation.
Exactly. His principles can be applied to any situation where there's a struggle for advantage.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the art of war, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I'd say one of the most profound lessons is that true victory comes from knowing yourself and your opponent. This applies not just to conflicts, but to negotiations, personal growth, even just achieving your goals.
Powerful stuff.
It's a timeless principle that can guide you through any challenge.
Well said. It's been amazing exploring these ancient, yet surprisingly relevant ideas.
It has.
And for those who want to go even deeper,
Yeah.
we highly recommend picking up the full text of The Art of War and seeing how its wisdom can be applied to your own life.
It's a fantastic read.
It really is.
Remember, the battlefields might have changed, but the principles of strategy, leadership, and self-knowledge are still as relevant as ever.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep learning, keep strategizing, and keep winning those battles, whatever they may be. Until next time.